I've always been interested in Suda51 games ever since I saw No More Heroes, but I never really delved into them. Well, apart from playing a bit of Killer is Dead. With Killer7, I've seen the game around, but I didn't know anything about it. The cel-shaded graphics definitely caught my attention though. It had this stylish, eye-catching art style that made it look like it could have been released anytime after 2005. I played the PC version of the game, so seeing the 3D models in high definition gave it an even more timeless look. As for what the actual game was like, well, nothing could have prepared me for it. Killer7 is about Harmon Smith, a man who manifests the personalities of 7 different people in order to stop a terrorist organization known as Heaven Smile. That's the story in a nutshell, but I didn't know any of that when I started playing the game, and it's all because Killer7 just kinda drops you in the middle of everything. You watch a cutscene of a guy named Garcian Smith walking in the street, talking about his mission over the phone. After that, the first assignment begins and you start playing as that same guy, so naturally I assumed that he was the main character. At least until the game changed him into another person, but then he still appeared in a lot of cutscenes, so maybe he really was the main character? Wait, who's this? I was basically confused, which was a common thing that I felt throughout my Killer7 playthrough. Every time I felt like I figured out the characters in the story, the game would remind me that I barely knew anything. I still kept pushing on though, because I was just so intrigued and entertained by everything that was happening. The cutscenes gave me avant-garde action movie vibes, so I loved every second of it. Now the gameplay. It also confused me for a while since I never actually saw Killer7's gameplay prior to playing the whole thing, just out of context cutscenes from random videos. So yeah, I thought it would be in third person like Suda51's other games, but I was so wrong. I don't think I've played anything like it before. Like, the movement controls and combat were very unusual. Killer7 plays like a rail shooter, except you get to choose which direction you're heading, so you could go back and forth or sideways whenever there were hallways and doors. Along the way, you'll encounter Heaven Smile, demonic enemies that you need to kill, though it's not as straightforward as walking up to them and shooting them in the face. The game has fixed camera angles, so you'll have to listen to the enemies' laughs, which is a sign that they're nearby. Now, to actually find them, you have to stop and aim your weapon, which switches your POV into first person, and after searching around, you'll have to scan them to make them visible before you can finally shoot them. As unique as the gameplay is, the fixed camera angles and narrow maps kinda reminded me of Resident Evil, and I'd say it made the game unintentionally creepy. Or maybe that's just a me thing, because I got jump scared. A lot. I never knew what would be right around the corner, especially when the Heaven Smile was moving faster than the others. It didn't help that they had a freaky laugh every time they were close enough to explode in my face. There are different kinds of Heaven Smile, and they all have a weak point. Shooting those points kills them faster, though others can only be defeated using specific members of the Killer7. You can switch to 7 different playable assassins, known as Smiths, throughout the game. Switching characters can happen almost instantly since you can access the other Smiths in the menu, or simply hit the hotkeys on the keyboard on PC. Everyone has their own distinct playstyle and special abilities, which spices things up in the game, since there's a lot of backtracking. My favorite assassins to play as were Kaidi, Khan, and Mask. I like Kaidi for her powerful scope pistol, Khan for his fast-paced dual pistols, and Mask because I like blowing enemies up with his grenade launchers. The Smiths can be upgraded by using blood, which is gained from killing Heaven Smile. It's used to heal and upgrade the Killer7, making them deal more damage while unlocking different abilities. All of that is done in Harmon's room, which also serves as a save point. So apart from going around and killing Heaven Smile, progressing through the next section of the game requires you to collect items and solve puzzles. The puzzles in Killer 7 range from being quite strange to just plain simple. Some require memorization or a certain smith's power, while others need you to equip elemental rings that'll trigger something to change in the environment. Once you've solved all the level's puzzles, you'll acquire enough soul shells, which are used to unlock the path leading to a boss battle in the end. I appreciated this one character, Iwazaru, for being helpful, but the amount of exposition that all the different NPCs would provide was both interesting and overwhelming for me, which is why I had to look at a guide throughout the game just so I wouldn't get lost, especially in the later levels. Some maps had so many different hallways and rooms, and some even had big open spaces, which made backtracking frustrating when I would miss certain objectives. The game is generally forgiving though, like dying in the game doesn't end things, unless Garcian does, since he's the only one who can revive characters. But yeah, when a smith dies, you'll have to play as him and retrieve their bodies. It was a hassle when I died far away from Harmon's room, but it wasn't that bad during boss battles since the bodies would be really close by. Oh, and speaking about boss battles, I was always looking forward to them after completing a level, and it's not just because of the really short hallway leading up to them with awesome music playing. They just had such unique mechanics and, characters. Like, I'll never forget the boss that's literally an anime girl. She looked so out of place when compared to the other characters in the game. But yeah, every boss had their own little gimmick. They were really easy to defeat, but it didn't take away from the experience because of how memorable it all was. It was always a showdown with characters that I barely knew about, which brings me to, the game's story itself, and maybe just my thoughts about literally everything else, because I don't think I can provide much input on the story and everything that unfolded in the game. Coming from someone who went into the game completely blind, Killer 7's story made me feel like I was put in the middle of complicated affairs that have spanned decades, which I think is sort of what was happening in the game. I didn't really understand a lot of things about the game, even when I finished my playthrough, but it still had me intrigued. It showed the power struggle between the opposing parties of the game's story, and it had a lot of political commentary between Japan and the United States. On top of all that were themes of individuality and past trauma. Everything was just a lot to take in, but at the same time, the story felt like something that I really wanted to read into now that I finished my playthrough. Like the type of story that would have countless interpretations, analysis videos, and wikis made about it. It just got me really excited to dive into it all because I feel like my whole understanding of Killer 7 is only on a surface level. I can't say that I completely had fun with the game though, especially in the later assignments. Going through the same gameplay loop of finding items, completing puzzles, shooting enemies, and backtracking ended up feeling really tedious. I felt like I was pushing through the whole thing just to see how the whole story would end up, which probably shouldn't interest me at all since I was almost always confused. But I just loved watching all the bizarre cutscenes and nonsensical dialogue that apparently makes a lot of sense. Now, do I recommend Killer 7? Yes and no. It really depends on whether you're the type of person who would enjoy a game like this. It's just very far off from practically every game out there. But if you like playing unique games, I'd say it's absolutely worth it if you want to experience a cult classic. Let me know what you thought about the video, and thank you to my patrons at Patreon for supporting my channel. Okay, wow. This was a really hard video to make. I don't think I even did the game justice, but I'm just glad that I finally got to talk about Killer 7, and hopefully get some people interested in it too. This won't be the last time that I'll be diving into Suda 51 games, so I hope you look forward to future stuff about it on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.